Hey folks, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. In this case, it's going to be 5 reasons for gold and silver after shit hits the fan, after an economic collapse or a very serious financial downturn. Gold and silver are often mentioned as good investments for an economic collapse, as a way in which you are protecting some of your savings. I fully agree with that. I mean, I have mentioned it in my book, The Modern Survival Manual, Surviving the Economic Collapse. Link below. I have said so myself. It's during the economic collapse of Argentina, where the peso lost pretty much 60–70% of its value overnight, or just a few days. If you had that money in gold and silver, or even dollars for that matter, but just staying away of the local fiat currency was the way in which you were protected. And if you think of any other country, any other fiat currency where the piece of paper may lose its value, if you have the actual physical metal with you, you're protected from that, no question whatsoever. Now, having said that, I wouldn't even call gold and silver as investments. That's something that I would disagree with, because if you start looking at it that way, you're going to be pretty much disappointed, because first of all, it's not really an investment to begin with. A real investment is something that generates income on its own. If you have, for example, real estate, you have a house, you have it for rent, that's generating income. That's an investment. You own a business or part of a business that generates an income for you, real investment. Gold and silver would be a special kind of commodity. This is just me, this is in my opinion. A special kind of commodity because it has certain traits and characteristics that no other commodity has. If you look up commodity in Google, one of the definitions you find is that commodity is a marketable item produced to satisfy wants and needs. Definitely gold and silver are commodities. But that's the definition you find in Wikipedia. Right next to that definition of commodity in Wikipedia, you find a picture of this. This is just right next to it in the picture. This is yerba mate. Yerba mate, you drink it, it's kind of like a strong tea. I drink it every day, very typical of South America. Yes, it's a commodity. The picture of yerba mate was right next to coffee and tea. And even though it is a commodity, there's a clear demand for it, and there's a given price. If I go around my neighborhood with this, trying to sell it or trade it for goods and services, I'm not going to be very lucky, because most people around here don't drink this stuff, so they don't have much of a use. That's not the same thing for gold and silver. This takes us quickly to the first point about gold and silver that's very important, which is acceptability. Gold and silver are accepted pretty much anywhere in the world. Any city in the world that you could think of, you will find a store, a shop of some kind where gold and silver are being bought. You can just drop by them, sell it, and you will get money, whatever currency is used in that given country. But it's going to be accepted pretty much in any city of the world. No other commodity has that characteristic. My yerba mate sure doesn't. A barrel of oil is a commodity, but try going around with a barrel of oil and see how much money you get out of it. Not very likely. For the average Joe that has stuff in his house, commodities, you will not find a way of selling it nearly as well as gold and silver. Of course, you do lose some money in the transaction. You always do that, but you're going to be able to sell it. You're going to be able to get most of your money out of it. That's the first big point about it. This is because of an acceptance gold has and silver has that goes back throughout time. This quickly takes us to point number 2, stability. Throughout history, it's been this way. Gold and silver have been accepted as something valuable, even used as a currency in every culture, every part of the world you could think of for thousands of years. No other commodity can say the same thing. It's been that way since the beginning of history. Going back thousands and thousands of years ago. That's really not likely to change. The stability that it has even goes beyond that. It's surprising how even in financial terms it's being kept stable. Sure, these days we've seen the market being manipulated a little bit. We've seen gold and silver go up and down in price. Some people are upset about, oh, I bought it at 40 and now I'm selling at 20. Gold was 2,000 bucks, now it's 1,500, this and that. The market can be manipulated, but only to a certain point. That's the key thing to understand. Some of the big players can manipulate the market only to a degree, because at the end of the day, you cannot generate gold and silver out of thin air as you can do with pretty much everything else. You can punch zeros in a computer, and some of the big corporations, some of the major interests can generate money out of thin air. They cannot generate gold and silver out of thin air. That's why it will always have a value. It will never become worthless, which is, you cannot say the same thing about pretty much any other currency around. Even if you think of the goods and services you would be getting out of it, I've covered this before in previous videos. Search it in my channel, click on the channel in the little search box, gold, silver. I talked about how during the Roman Empire, of course, they would be using gold and silver, and the basic minimum wage would be a denarius, a small silver coin. As of today, prices would be like what, like $5–10 worth of silver. And you may be thinking, okay, I'm not living on $5 a day, but you know, it's really not that far from what many people today in some parts of the world actually live in. And again, that would be like the minimum wage. Some guys would be getting 3, 4, or 5 denarius a day, depending on the kind of job that they did. But as of today, even today, a denarius is, you know, in many parts of the world, what some people are still living on. So it's really not that far-fetched. If you look at some of the things you could have bought with an ounce of gold, for example, during the Roman Empire, a gold coin, an ounce of gold, would buy you a very fancy toga dress with quality handcrafted leather sandals and a fancy belt, a full dress attire for an ounce of gold. In today's term, that ounce of gold still buys you a very nice suit, nice set of a nice pair of shoes, and a nice leather belt, you know, a fancy set of clothing for today's standard. That has remained pretty much the same. If you look at, for example, buying a 200 years ago, buying a handcrafted quality pistol, handmade quality pistol, you would have been able to buy that with an ounce of gold 200 years ago. Today, that same gold coin buys you a top of the line, very high-end handgun, a good quality pistol as of today. So it somewhat retains its value. That's one of the beauties of it. Even through thousands of years, you're still looking at you know, pretty much the same purchasing power, given, of course, in spite of the obvious differences. But that's definitely one of the things that gives it an edge, especially when you're trying to find a way of protecting yourself from these unpredictable events, such as what could possibly happen during an economic collapse. Moving forward, point number 3, portability. This is very important as well. No other commodity is as easy to just drop in your pocket like a gold coin and just, you know, walk away with that and have that that amount of your savings in such a compact, portable form. Of course, real estate is not really as portable. It's definitely not so. Even if you look at some of the things talked about in the survival community, when people talk about barter products, thinking of, okay, I'm going to be buying, instead of putting money into gold and silver, which is just shiny metal, I'm going to be buying something that actually has a use. Instead of buying $100 of silver, I will buy $100 of canned food. I'll get 200 cans of soup. Sure, you're going to be eating that. It has a use, of course, but if you think of it as something that that you're going to be trading with in the future or selling in the future, point number 1, acceptability. It's not going to be as accepted as easily, not as easy to sell as precious metals. It's not nearly as portable either. Moving around with 200 cans of, of soup, it's a little bit of hard work. It's not very realistic. You will need some serious transportation for that. Not the same thing. If you look at some of the advantages in terms of people that have been forced to evacuate, all right, not only is it something that it's not stuck in a real estate property, it's not stuck to a physical place as a business in so many ways. It's something that you can just grab it, literally grab it and take off with it. This is something that refugees throughout history have learned to appreciate and value very highly. People that have left because of war, because of religious or ethnic persecution, thinking of, you know, all sorts of events in history. Jews during Nazi Germany escaping Germany with a little bit of their gold and starting over elsewhere. There's really nothing else. If you maybe had money in an account in that country and you're basically being kicked out of it or being persecuted, you're not able to take your money out of it. You just have to grab whatever it is that you have and just take off. The portability is a key factor. It's essential. And this is where I'd like to make another important point, especially for you guys that are already understanding of precious metals as something for protecting some of your savings and such. And many folks end up buying silver because it's cheap. You may be thinking, okay, I have a little bit of money left this month. I'm going to be buying an extra ounce of gold or of silver or two, you know, just a couple silver coins. That's great, but eventually you start piling up, and silver, believe me, it gets heavy. And if you ever have to leave one day, you may be taking a look at some heavy stuff with that amount of silver. Gold is much more of a compact form. So just something to keep in mind. If you're looking at the amount of precious metals that you have, think of how easily it would be for you to move that around. There's a good chance that if you're already into this, you may have a considerable amount of weight in silver, and you may want to take a look at it and maybe trade some of that for something more compact in case you have to leave with just what's the clothes on your back, and maybe a small bug-out bag or small backpack, and that's that. If that's the situation you are involved in one day, because of a number of possible disasters and emergencies, if that ever happens, you will really appreciate the portability of gold compared to silver. Moving on to 4, uniformity. No other commodity is as uniform as the actual metal, the actual precious metal. Pure gold, pure silver, in their purest form, the pure element. If it's just pure silver, you know, it's just that. There's nothing else that could be going on there. There's no other component. That makes it pretty. That's one of the reasons why it's so acceptable, and it has been that way for so long during history. It's very easy, even though there are counterfeits attempts and such, for someone that knows what he's doing with the different kits that you have, scratch and acid kits, or some of those electronic pens, it's being so uniform in its composition. It makes it easier for people to know what they're dealing with and accept it more readily so. I was just thinking right now of portability. One of the reasons why, thinking of the historic importance, if your gold ring, gold jewelry has a practical application. It's not just about aesthetics and beauty and decoration and such. Gold jewelry did have a practical use back in the day. It was a way of having some form of wealth on you that could not be easily taken away. If you had a coin purse, it could be snatched, it could be stolen, robbed. If you had a ring, it could be robbed as well, but not as easily as that. So for people that maybe had to leave all of a sudden without anything else, it was a way of having something of value, some of that money, some of those savings on their body at all times, basically. And if you had nothing else, at least you had the gold ring, maybe a couple of them, maybe a chain. It was a way of having some precious metal on you at all times. Interesting how things have worked out throughout history. So durability would be the final point number 5. no other commodity is as durable as the actual precious metal. If you dig out a gold coin today that's 2,000 years old, of course it's going to be having a value beyond its intrinsic gold and silver composition. It's going to be having a historic added value as well. But even if that's not the case, the actual metal, it's not altered as time goes by. No other very few commodities. You could think of other metals and such, but other commodities, thinking of teas, of mate or oil or whatever, they're not as stable. They have an expiration date. Some of the stuff you see people talk about in the survival preparedness community, food has an expiration date. Even though canned food lasts way beyond its expiration date, as time goes by, it may lose its value completely depending on the conditions in which it was kept, the specific type of food you're talking about. So those are all things that may alter if it's a valued commodity or not. With ammunition, for example, we've seen the price of ammunition go up a lot. People saying, wow, I should have bought ammunition instead because it has gone up in price so much. I could just sell it, make a profit of it right now. Yeah, sure, but it's and when people think of it as ammunition is going to be the currency of the future post-collapse world, that's really stretching reality into the fantasy land. And one of the reasons for that is that ammunition is not really as stable as precious metals. It really depends on the conditions in which you kept it. Ammunition is it can be even ruined by very damped conditions of storage. So it's not only the ammo that you have, it's also the conditions in which it was stored. Not being a uniform, remember point number four, not being a uniform item, there's different components to it. You don't even know if it was tampered open and refilled with something that is not even powder and it's not even working. For something as delicate as ammunition in a post-collapse world, I wouldn't want to be playing with, especially for something as as essential as ammunition, being used for defending your life or the life of your loved ones, being used for hunting and putting food on the table. You don't want to be playing with that. It has to actually work. If not, definitely not. So this idea of these other commodities being used as a currency, definitely not. Barter, sure, depending on the specific case. Guys, if there's a given set of circumstances after a disaster, people are hungry, and you have food, of course it's going to be of value, no question whatsoever. But you're talking about a very specific set of conditions that is really not that likely to happen. So gambling on that for your savings, I don't think it's wise at all. It would be much, it's playing it much safer going for something so proven, so stable as precious metals instead. So guys, those are some of the points I wanted to talk about and cover. Yet again, making reference to the importance of precious metals, at least for some of your savings, putting a percentage of that so as to protect it in a worst case scenario. Folks, remember to subscribe to the channel, share the video, like it if you liked it, and take care. See you on our next video. Have a great day.